And then the young man pulled out a Gospel of John where we read that there is a God, and this God is love. And when he created you and me in his image, in his likeness, he placed within you and me the innate ability to love. So every atheist loves, every agnostic loves, every theist loves. Why? Because we're human beings, not machines. We're human beings created in the image and likeness of God.
Furthermore, Cliffe cooking. I ain't even going front. Furthermore,
It's the Tyrone. I just got that free for you, as you love the whole.
I got loyalty inside my DNA.
Mr. Cliffe has a very educational conversation with this lovely agnostic man. I have been hearing that this was a really great back and forth debate and conversation between these two. I heard some very good points were made, and I love doing a good reaction to Cliffe. I used to watch Cliffe a lot when I was a Christian myself, and I love just looking back at these conversations. And sometimes I will even play, angel's advocate, and will look more so on how Christians see things or how Cliffe sees things, because not always, Cliffe sometimes makes some really good points. Sometimes he don't. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see how I feel as I'm watching the video. Make sure you hit that like button, and let's get into it.
Okay. Thanks for asking that honest question. I appreciate it. The reason that I believe that God exists is because of certain evidence. First piece of evidence, the order and the design of the cosmos points me to some type of intelligent mind, because my experience in life is, in order to bring about order, I got to work real hard. And when I get sick, I don't go running to a neophyte. When I get really sick, I go running to a highly, highly trained doctor who understands the order and design of the human body. My experience in life is, order demands an intelligent mind behind it. It doesn't come about by chance. Second piece of evidence for me. Life, in my experience, always comes from life. I don't care if it's plant life, animal life, human life. You never get life out of non-life. In other words, you never get the animate from the inanimate. Therefore, is it more reasonable for me to believe in the beginning God, or is it more reasonable for me to believe in the beginning matter and energy? Because I only see life come from life, never life come from non-life, it's far more plausible, reasonable for me to believe in the beginning God. Third point, the moral argument. I think you've been standing here while I've been articulating it. I am convinced that although there are not many, there are at least a few moral absolutes. Although there's a lot of ethical gray, probably more ethical gray than ethical black and white, there at times is ethical black and white, crystal clear.
Moral absolute.
Moral absolute.
So those are the three reasons.
Those are three.
Order.
Order design, coming from intelligent mind. Life coming from life, not from non-life.
Okay.
Moral absolutes. Fourth one, love.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. Now, here's the thing, right? I'm not an atheist. I know for whatever reason people come on my platform and they think I'm an atheist because I present a lot of, I guess you could say, atheistic viewpoints, or I should say that a lot of people who deconstruct go immediately into atheism. As for me, I am a very spiritual person. I still acknowledge that there is a infinite divine consciousness. There is an infinite divine source. I don't call it God. I have gotten out of the I've gotten out of the phase of calling this source the universe. I believe the universe is a vessel for the infinite reality, for the infinite source, the divine consciousness. I believe that this divine consciousness animates all and is within all creation, every being, every animal, even from the plants and the trees and the sun and the moon. All of that is animated and is an expression of what we call the divine source. So I still believe in what you want to call God. I acknowledge that there is a higher power. I acknowledge that there is a higher source, a supreme source. However, I do not believe that you can put a name on the source. I do not believe that you can place this source in a box. I do not believe that there is a specific door or path or name that you have to walk to, towards, or call upon, whatever the case is. I do not believe that there is a specific way to express this God. I do not believe that there is a specific book that you have to read to express this God. I do not believe that you can suppress something that is infinite. So that is where I stand. I am the Omnist Rone, so I am able to understand that there is one universal truth, but there are many different ways to express that one universal truth. That is why we have the saying of what your truth is might be different from what my truth is. Life is all about perspective. You can admit, you can acknowledge that your favorite color might be red or yellow or green or purple or blue, but understand that all of those colors make up the rainbow.
My experience of life is that love is crucial to my marriage, my family, my friendships. Love is a crucial motive in my life. If it's lacking, life turns very sterile, very empty. The only way love can be real is if there is more to reality than matter and energy. There's got to be some type of God who creates us with this innate ability to genuinely love. If there is no God, the Duke University student was correct when he said, love is simply a biological drive to preserve the genetic pool. And I said, sir, do you really think that's what motivates Mother Teresa to work among the dying in Calcutta, India? He said, yes. I have a fundamental disagreement with that. My experience in life is, no. Mother Teresa was motivated by love for the dying in Calcutta, India. That's why she did what she did. Not motivated primarily by a drive to preserve the genetic pool. That's a fourth piece of evidence.
Four.
Right.
Do you mind if I ask some questions about
Go right ahead.
order? I know a little about computers, not a lot, but a little. And I know there are computer programs that write very complicated, very ordered programs that do things. Extremely ordered. But I would not go back and say that the program that wrote it is a life, or capable of love, or capable of thought in the way I think of thought. I have seen order that is caused.
I wonder what this man would feel about AI. Wherever this man is at, he seems like a very intelligent, college man too as well. I believe, I don't know when this was, Cliffe here has to be at least in his maybe mid-30s maybe. And Cliffe now is like I want to say Cliffe is in his mid-30s here. He might be like in his early 40s even, because like Cliffe right now is like in his 60s maybe. So this could be in the early 2000s possibly. But I would just love to see what this man would, because he was saying how highly intelligent
by
computer programs
seemingly
are.
Disorder or random occurrence.
But he's making a fair case.
I've seen order that doesn't necessarily come from a cogent willed source. And I've seen order come from a cogent willed source that was very evil, or you would define evil. So, first of all, I would contend that I think I've seen order from chaos, and I know I've seen, or at least I like to think I've seen, order from what you would dictate as evil. So is it order from chaos? And if it's order only from order, why does that necessarily imply a good entity that created this order?
Okay, I have strong disagreements with one point, and I strongly agree with your second point. I think it's rather clear that a computer comes from an intelligent mind. I've never met a computer that just came about by accident. So that computer obviously was ordered by an intelligent mind. So there's no problem with computers.
Also, I would like to add on to the analogy of the computer having an intelligent creator. That's how I see the universe. That the universe functions in itself as a system, as a vessel, but it is the divine consciousness that works through the universe. And it is through the universe that everything manifests within what we call space and reality.
But I think you raise a tremendous issue when it comes to evil. I think you're absolutely correct. I think it's totally possible that this intelligent mind is a warped Scrooge.
Okay. What was the second reason now? Just to get
Okay, second thing is life comes from life, not from non-life.
That one's harder for me. I'm not a biologist, but I know that there's a lot of theories that say that given the right materials, the right electric charge, so to speak, and the right atmosphere, we can create proteins, we can create enzymes, we can create complex molecules, and from that, this.
Keep an eye on how Cliffe tackles this question. The student brings up a really thought-provoking point that many of us might be wondering about, so there's a lot to learn from Cliffe's response.
Okay, and my point would be, I would not be shocked if scientists created life, because that's exactly what I believe. Intelligent mind creates life. My point is, you've got to have the intelligent mind there. You don't just have life coming out of non-life by accident.
You don't think it's possible, even remotely possible, even infinitesimally remotely possible, that in some primordial pool, a lightning strike struck a complex of molecules that created an enzyme that then allowed us to evolve into this over billions of years?
Anything is possible.
Possible.
Correct. Okay. Anything is possible.
But more probable for the God?
Exactly. You see, for me as a thinking human being, the question is, what is most plausible in light of the evidence.
Third point was?
Third point was moral absolutes.
Now, to even pinpoint even more on Cliff's point, because that is actually a very good point, that when you study, and this is something that I always tell, like I was having this conversation with one of my friends, and she's kind of like what you would call like an agnostic atheist, right? So we was going back and forth, and she was just personally asking me, like, what would you provide for evidence for there being a higher power or a divine source? And I was like, if you just study mathematics, mathematics is a very sacred art. It is a very sacred craft. I think Pythagoras said that math, or numbers rather, is the language of God. And if you just study numerical patterns and numerical values, and you just study addition and subtraction and multiplication and division, and just study, I mean, the Pythagorean theorem, even, like, if you study the geometric patterns of things in nature and just how perfectly formed they are, if you study the human autonomy, I truly believe that you can come to a conclusion that there has to have been an intelligent force, an intelligent supreme consciousness to create these things. That's just how I see it. Doesn't mean, make a disclaimer, does not mean that it is the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible is fairly new compared to how long humanity has been on Earth. The modern humans, I believe, dates back to maybe 200, 300,000 years ago. The modern human species. So, let me just make that disclaimer. Not giving any type of leeway to there being any type of gods to have existed. Far, far away from that.
I don't have a counter for that.
Fourth point was love.
That I don't understand. And I'd really benefit if you could explain it to me.
Sure.
I don't understand what you mean by it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never experienced what you're talking about. And I'm fairly happy with my life.
Mm-hmm. All right. What I'm talking about is, in the 60s, there was a riot at the Sorbonne, the French university in Paris. And a young man walked up to a bearded man and said, "Excuse me, sir, what are you rioting about?" The bearded man said, "I'm protesting this lousy world." The young man asked, "Do you believe in God?" The man said, "No, I'm an atheist." The young man asked, "Do you love anyone?" Bearded man lowered his head and said, "Yes, I love a woman by whom I've had a child, and she's dying of leukemia." Young man said, "Well, if she's dying of leukemia, why don't you ditch her and go out and get some other fox who turns you on a little more?" Bearded man hauled back and almost hit the young guy. The young guy said, "Excuse me, sir, you said there is no God." Well, if there is no God, there is no innate human ability to genuinely care for somebody else. And if this woman is losing her ability to sexually excite you because her body's falling apart due to leukemia, why don't you go out and get some other fox who turns you on a little more? And then the young man pulled out a Gospel of John where we read that there is a God, and this God is love. And when he created you and me in his image, in his likeness, he placed within you and me the innate ability to love. So every atheist loves, every agnostic loves, every theist loves. Why? Because we're human beings, not machines. We're human beings created in the image and likeness of God.
Furthermore, Cliff cooking, I ain't even going front. Furthermore, with divine consciousness, we all have what Carl Jung calls like the archetypes within us. We have archetypal patterns within us. We have these different expressions and characteristics within us that we bring out within ourselves. And each of us have different things about ourselves. We have different expressions. We have different just personalities and different just like variety has to be like, aside from like when I was talking about geometric patterns, variety has to be one of those pinpoints for you to see that there is a divine consciousness, for there to be so much variety and diversity. I mean, like, there's probably like 20 different formats in my room, maybe even more than that, but just minimum, just 20 different type of formats of logos and structure and 20 different things that come from different cultures. Just alone in terms of how we think and what we entertain, there's so much that goes into it. But to get back on the archetypes, there's just so many different archetypes and so many different personalities out there. And sometimes we will even run into people that reminds us of other people. Don't know why that was a tongue twister. But just alone in terms of how we communicate and connect with one another, I do believe that connection, how we genuinely connect with one another, is divine. Now, when we're dealing with divine connection and how we unify with one another, that's a little iffy with the Yahweh God. Because Yahweh does not like when humanity genuinely connects with one another and they literally thrive without him. Literally, he sabotages every time that humanity wants to do something without him. It's literally within their Bible that an apocalypse will happen, a doomsday, an Armageddon will happen when humanity wants to do whatever they want to do. So then God's like, I'm about to come down and I'm about to burn this bitch. So much for free will, God. Thank you. When humanity was doing their own thing during the days of Noah, it grieved God's heart. So then he flooded that bitch. You feel me? So it's just like, it doesn't make any type of sense when you're dealing with this God. He created the 10 commandments, and about a fourth of them is all about worship only me. I am a jealous God. Like, how are you a jealous God and you create the whole universe? How are you a jealous God and you proclaim to be so powerful and almighty and the Lord of hosts and all these different things? There's something that's under the surface that he's not telling you. This is why he lied to Adam and Eve about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He told them that if they were to eat from the tree, they would die. The snake, the Kundalini serpentine, the serpentine energy, the Kundalini serpent, that's what the symbolism is in that story. But the serpent, the wise serpent, tells Eve, this God, supposed God, doesn't want you to know that when you eat from this tree, you shall be just like him, knowing good and evil. And when they ate from the tree, God told his homies, all right, because we're dealing with more than one God. We're not even dealing with the Trinity. He told his homies, he told the divine council, they have become like us, knowing good and evil. And if they eat from that tree of life, we are in trouble. What would have happened if they were to eat from the tree of life? Think about that. What would have happened if they were to eat from the tree of life? They would have been fucked. Because he said if they were to eat from the tree of life, they will live forever. I mean, humanity is already a common threat as it is with this God, because how could Jacob wrestle with an angel? How could Lilith, somehow, some way escape God? I mean, of course he was punished if you know about that story. Punished. But either way, she still survived. How is it with this God that you just don't see the flaws in his character? Like, if he was to have any other name, if he was to switch him out and apply this template to any other male God, we could obviously see the flaws. But because we have been programmed to see this God as the Most High and the Almighty God and the only God, you will bypass and overlook all of his flaws. Anyways, we'll deal with that for another time.
Is that love the only emotion that God put in us, or are all of our emotions from God?
No, God gave us emotions, but due to our sin, we can twist those emotions. The classic example is anger. There's nothing wrong with anger. Confronted by evil, God is angry. Confronted by evil, I should be angry. That's moral indignation. That's righteous anger. But in my selfishness, in my sinfulness, I twist anger and I lose my temper with someone because they step in front of me at the line at the airport. Don't they know who they just step in front of? And so I explode in a selfish type of anger, and that's sinful.
We tie this with your creation ex nihilo argument, creation from nothing. A counter to it. Everything here from God. Was there anything before God? Was there any before
God is eternal, so there's nothing before
everything from God?
No, not everything from God. Because God has given you and me gifts of creativity, obviously God did not make your jacket or eyeglasses. Obviously God did not build that building. And obviously if I go up to him and kick him in the jaw, that's not God kicking him in the jaw. Or if I go up to him and pull my wallet out and give him $1, it's not God giving him $1. So because God has given you and me gifts of creativity, we can create. And we do all the time.
I will disagree with that. I will say that divine consciousness has many different ways of expressing itself. Now, I'm not telling you that there is a God or a being that is controlling you to do these things, but it is through us being an extension of divine consciousness, through us being an extension of infinite source, of infinite beingness, that we are God playing as human, right? So in this scenario, if I come up and slap you, that is an extension of divine consciousness acting out of order, you could say. But if I come up and I give you words of inspiration and I hug you, that is divine consciousness expressing itself in a way that is in alignment with order, with life. So that's just how I see it personally.
So then, some things from God, some from man. Man used in a general sense, male, female.
Yeah, God's given us gifts of creativity.
And as far as the moral absolutes go, you say there's some. Okay, where do I find them?
2 places. First of all, you go to your conscience. And secondly, you ask, has God revealed a standard that I can measure my conscience against? Jesus Christ claimed that he was that standard, that his ethical teachings are that standard. You can find him in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5 through 7. You can find them in 10 Commandments, Exodus 20.
My conscience, the first source.
First one, conscience, right.
That troubles me. My conscience guides my behavior very differently from what I would assume you would guide it as yourself.
That's right.
I'm extremely selfish and almost exclusively act in my own interest.
That's right.
That is how my conscience guides me.
Uh-huh. Well, I dare say, though, that occasionally you experience guilt. Maybe not often, but occasionally. My point is,
Really guilt.
you've never experienced guilt?
Not guilt. I've regretted my actions in the sense that they didn't have the outcome I thought they were. They weren't as beneficial to me as I thought they would be. That's regret, but not guilt.
All right. Speaking for myself, at times I have experienced guilt, which means I am convinced that what I did was wrong.
Compared to something other than your conscience?
Well, all I know is I experience guilt. My conscience informs me of it.
And these 4 reasons that you've given, you feel, make it more probable that there is a God and that there isn't.
Correct. And then there's another one.
Okay.
Your agnosticism.
Okay?
It is an intellectual option to be an agnostic. It is a practical impossibility. Every day you have to make priorities. Every day you have to make ethical decisions. And your priorities in life and your ethical decisions in life show very clearly you're not agnostic. You believe something, you believe in someone. That has motivated you to set the priorities that you have. I obviously don't know what those are. What you believe in has obviously motivated you to invest your money the way you do, your time the way you do. So there are many people who can say, I'm agnostic, I don't know. But practically, the way you live your life shows that you believe something.
So then would it be more honest of me to say, practically, I believe in me?
And yes, correct.
Then I may have misinterpreted agnosticism. I took it and have taken it to mean, I don't know what's there. I'm not going to make any decision about it. I'll listen to whoever has something to say and see what I think.
Right, and I think intellectually you can do that. But now, you have to go out and live your life. And the way you live your life shows whether you acknowledge God or not. See, that's the embarrassing thing about what we're talking about out here. The embarrassing thing about what we're talking about here is, it's not like, do you like black leather or brown leather jackets? Which is totally an issue of your own preference. Do you like Pepsi or Coke? Because you see, it really doesn't matter whether you like a brown leather jacket or a black leather jacket, whether you like Pepsi or Coke. Those are rather inconsequential issues. But the issue of God's existence is not along the lines of Pepsi and Coke, black and brown leather jackets. It's an issue that goes right to the heart of human existence, because it's an issue of what is the meaning and purpose of your life? Why do you live your life ethically the way you do? And what about life after death? Are you ever going to have to answer to anybody for the way you lived your life? You see, so due to the grievously serious nature of the issues that are all wrapped up in God's existence, although I can say, I don't know whether God exists or not, the way I live my life, the meaning I attach to my life, the ethical decisions I make in my life, Knechtle will tell you what I believe about reality.
Thank you.
So to respond to that, I do not believe, this is where I disagree with certain Christians. Christians sometimes believe that you have to believe in a God in order to have a moral compass. If y'all seen my Damon Darling reaction video, that will be linking up in the end of this video. But I was talking about this same type of issue with the theological doctrine of Christianity, that they feel like you have to believe in a certain God, or rather in their God, in order for you to have a moral compass. It's very far from the truth if you understand the history of the religion of Christianity. Nonetheless, they feel like you have to believe in a God to have a moral compass in order, and also for you to have purpose and meaning in life. I strongly disagree. I do not believe that you have to believe in a certain God or believe that there is a God in order for you to have purpose and value in life. I do understand that they feel like, from their argument, that you just live life for what exactly? That's their argument. You live life for what? What is the bigger purpose? What is the big ending to how you're living life? And to their, to respond to that, most, atheists or skeptics or people who are, who don't believe in God, they say, I just live life because there is meaning to life. I have a mother, I have a father, I have brothers and sisters, I have friends, I have children, people that I love to hang out with. I have hobbies and I create these things, and I have a career and all these like things that I have implemented into my life that are valuable to me, and I want to live that adventure throughout life. So in the essence of who we are, we create meaning and purpose for our life. We don't need an outside force. We don't need a religion or a God to tell us about what is the meaning and purpose to our life. And in reference to the afterlife, that's free game. Nobody knows what's going to happen when we take our last breath. Nobody knows what's going to happen when we enter, on the other side, if there's even another side. I believe there's another side, but I feel like when it comes to the afterlife, it's way, way more complex, not complicated, but way more complex than what we might think it is. That's just me personally. But this was actually a very well put together conversation. Typically whenever Cliffe have go back and forth conversations with an atheist or an agnostic, it just gets very rowdy. But this was very, very well put together. This is actually one for the books. I'll put it that way. But I'm about to go and make me some dinner. Y'all let me know how y'all feel about that in the comments below. This your boy. We out.
Tell me something. You motherfuckers can't tell me nothing. I'd rather die than to listen to you. My DNA not for imitation.